Do you know what the difference between yoga and Pilates is? Maybe you've heard the term Pilates, maybe you've heard yoga, but you might be a little confused about really what the difference is. Maybe you've done a Pilates mat class and a yoga class and think that that's all there is. But there's actually a whole nother side of Pilates that includes all of this equipment. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today. I'm so glad you guys are joining me. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk about the history of Pilates. We're going to talk about the history of yoga. We're going to talk about the benefits of both, some other key considerations and things like this. So my name is Linnea. I am the owner and founder of Limber Arts, Pilates and Personal Training here in Olympia, Washington, and online from anywhere. So I have a long history with both yoga and Pilates. I actually grew up doing yoga with my mom. She was certified in yoga back in Boulder, Colorado in the 70s, I think. So I definitely grew up in a yogi family. And then I started teaching yoga and kind of found my way into Pilates from yoga. And then from there, I've gone on to become a personal trainer and study functional biomechanics and things like this as well. Okay, so let's dive in. So let's talk basically about a brief overview and history of both. Okay, so if we start with the history of yoga, it's kind of a whole can of worms because the history is very long and very deep. So it really goes way back. Okay, it started in India. Kind of depending on what, how far back you want to go, like I would have to look, but I would say hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Essentially, when we start to talk about just like modern yoga and maybe the last 100 years or so, we are talking about usually we're talking about Bikram yoga, we're talking about Ashtanga yoga, we're talking about Hatha yoga. These are the more sort of traditional terms. And then of course, Vinyasa yoga has become quite popular. And then there's, modern Western, yoga. It could have any number of names, right? But it's really deeply connected and rooted with Indian philosophy and spirituality, meditation, and so forth. So it kind of depends a little bit like which school of thought. There's many different kind of branches in the beautiful old tree of yoga. So Kundalini yoga is a whole different branch. Some different branches definitely have a little more focus on meditation and mindfulness and a little less focus maybe on like what we think of as like the physical movements of yoga. Okay. And then if we're talking about a basic overview and history of Pilates, so Joseph Pilates was a guy, right? It has a much more recent history. And many people do think that Joseph Pilates did practice yoga. So there's definitely, a certain amount of crossover where you can kind of tell that yoga influenced the creation of Pilates, but it's fairly separate, right? It's kind of just like a vague, like, oh, I can see a little similarity. But other than that, it's really a very different system. And so Joseph Pilates, he was interned on the Isle of Man during World War I. And he had been an avid athlete and coach before this, but he found himself rehabilitating injured soldiers. And all he had to work with was like these military cots, right? So he started pulling springs off of military cots in order to kind of help rehabilitate soldiers that were like having injuries and different things like that. And he had such great success with it that it turned into this whole thing. The German army wanted to enlist him to kind of train their soldiers, and he refused. And so he kind of like escaped Germany and came to the US. And on the boat ride there, he met his wife. And so they moved to New York, and his wife was a ballet dancer. And so then the whole world of ballet and dance in New York City kind of took Pilates under his wing and adapted this whole system. So it's very focused on rehabilitative movement, and then it's kind of become known as like cross training for dancers. So that is the briefest overview of these two different schools of thought. They are both relatively highly focused on flexibility to a certain degree, much more so than like classic like strength training. But beyond that, they are quite separate. Okay, so let's talk a little more specifically about the benefits and the different styles of Pilates. Okay, so the main two words you're going to hear in terms of different styles of Pilates is either classical Pilates or contemporary Pilates. Classical Pilates means you're doing Pilates the same way that Joseph Pilates designed the system. So it's really like to a T, first this exercise and then this exercise, exactly the same way that he designed his workouts back in the day. Okay, contemporary Pilates tends to take a little bit more of an artistic license to kind of create its own workouts. I am a contemporary Pilates instructor, and I love that it allows me to incorporate kind of the knowledge I have as a personal trainer, the knowledge I have as a yoga instructor, the knowledge that we have of more modern science and functional movement and things like this. And then another key distinction in terms of kind of the benefits and the different styles of Pilates is that you have mat Pilates, which is kind of the same as like a yoga mat, right? So it sort of feels similar because all you need is a little space. But then also in Pilates, you have a lot of equipment. So here behind me, I've got a few different pieces of Pilates equipment. The most well-known is the Pilates Reformer here. So key benefits of Pilates, really a little bit more focus on strength, I would say, than yoga. A little bit more focus, I would say, on functional strength and functional movement patterns. A little bit more, like you'll see a lot of crossover between like Pilates and physical therapy and things like this. A little bit you'll see that in yoga, but it tends to be a little bit more focused on like the mindfulness aspect of it. So yeah, benefits of Pilates, I would say also like functional flexibility. So you're going to be training flexibility in a way that also really requires muscle strength at the same time, whereas yoga can tend to have a little bit more sort of like passive flexibility components to it. Okay, so then let's talk a little bit about the benefits of yoga. Okay, so benefits and different styles of yoga. I already touched a little bit on those few different styles, but benefits of yoga, you're looking at, I would say the main one is a kind of mindfulness and meditation. There's also just a really beautiful culture and community around yoga, so I think that is a huge benefit. I mean, there's so much history there, you know, there's a whole world of kind of nutrition with Ayurveda, like herbalism and cuisine that even kind of follows the community and culture of yoga. So in my mind, that's one of my favorite parts of yoga, is just the community and the culture and the mindfulness and the meditative aspect of that whole system. And yeah, so let's see, maybe a few other considerations to think about. You know, I think that, I mean, I'm a little biased, right? Because I do more Pilates at this point than yoga. I've kind of a little bit left yoga behind. But that has also really come from my own personal experience. I was very committed to yoga. And as I continued to get more and more injuries, a handful of surgeries, working with clients and really trying to help them with their injuries, yoga just wasn't cutting it for me. And so I really had to look elsewhere. And so Pilates to me is a better choice when it comes to really kind of creating a balanced movement pattern that has a little bit more awareness of modern science backed by it, really. Same thing I would say with strength and flexibility. I do think that yoga, one of the benefits of yoga is just like the beauty of the flow. So if you are somebody that really likes that feeling of kind of dance and choreography and just kind of constant movement and flow, then certainly something like a vinyasa class might be a great thing for you. And then, like I said, the mindfulness and meditation is just such a huge consideration if you're sort of weighing Pilates and yoga. And, you know, I still like to say that Pilates is also kind of a mind-body type of fitness. In Pilates, you'll find a lot of coordination, a lot of kind of left and right patterning, a lot of unilateral movements that help to really highlight and rebalance different kind of imbalances in the system, if you will. So I hope that helps to clarify the difference between yoga and Pilates and gives you some good information as you choose when and where to practice either or both. So thanks for joining me. I will see you guys next time. Leave your comments and questions below, and have a good one. Bye.